Science and Analytics grant to infuse data science across the curriculum at Bowie State University. Before we begin, I want to talk a little bit about our research webinar series. This is the first of 5 research webinar series under the Data Science and Analytics Summer Undergraduate Research Institute. We like to call it DSA Surrey. And underneath this Undergraduate Research Institute program, we are working with 11 faculty mentors and 11 student participants to work with us to explore undergraduate research topics. Many of the topics that we're exploring this summer deal with a focus of impacting minority communities locally or nationally, and also there is a strong focus on COVID-19. At the end, let me go to the next slide. You will see that our future webinars are on Thursday, June 25th, Thursday, July 2nd, and Thursday, July 9th. At the end of our webinar series, we will have a culminating experience where our student undergraduates who are here with us today, hello students, they will present their research, and we welcome you to attend that session. What I'm going to also share with you now is a special offer for you to go ahead and register for our events in the future as well. So within this offer, you can click on the registration link that we have here now that we're providing, and you can go and register for our future events. Now, a couple of other things I would like to say is I would like to thank first the National Science Foundation, Bowie State University's president, Dr. Amita Bro, our interim provost, and I would like to welcome our new provost who is he was going to be starting in the beginning of July, Dr. Carl Goodman. Next, I would like to thank our data science and analytics faculty learning community members who come from various disciplines across campus at Bowie State University. I would like to welcome and thank our data science and analytics summer 2020 faculty mentors and student researchers. And I want to send a special thank you out to all of our Bowie State University students and alumni. I would specifically like to give a special thank you to my dean, Dr. Lawrence McNeil. Thank you so much for your support in these endeavors within our college. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Dean Aqua. I would also like to acknowledge the Department of Natural Sciences faculty and the College of Business faculty. Lastly, last but not least, I would like to thank my co-PIs, Dr. Azina Zinabi, Dr. Augustine Atimbe, Dr. Taisha Burks, and I am the PI for the grant as well. So we work such a great energy between us, and I could not have done this program or any other initiatives without you all's help, and I really appreciate you all. As listed here, we have future seminars that are lined up, and then we will move forward with our symposium topics on July 28th. So thank you again, and welcome to our visualization utilizing Tableau. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so my name is LaTanya Brown-Robertson, and I'm a professor of economics at Bowie State University. And our special guest today is Nick Stoll. He's a technical consultant with Tableau. I'm going to read a little bit about who Nick Stoll is. He graduated with a bachelor's in mathematics and physics, and after teaching English in China for the following year, he then went on to graduate school to get his master's master's in urban planning and transportation. His studies focused on transportation planning, modeling, and spatial analysis. After graduation, Nick was a transportation engineer working on future studies and traffic studies in transportation modeling. He went on to work with the State Department as an analyst for overseas building and operations. He now works for Tableau as a technical consultant, helping customers see and understand their data. Welcome, Nick. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So today I'm going to give you an overview of our agenda. The agenda is broken up into 2 days. On day 1, we have a public session, which you all are here today. And on day 2, we have a private session for our DSA Surrey, which stands for Data Science and Analytics Summer Undergraduate Research Institute, some student researchers as well as faculty mentors. So let me go back to day 1. So today for the first hour, what we're going to do is we're going to explore the basics of data gathering with data science methodology, and then we're going to do an introduction into Tableau, why visualization is important, understanding the cycle of analytics, looking at data cleaning and data prep within Tableau, and then Nick is going to give us a demo of the Tableau desktop model. Afterwards, you're more than welcome to stay as we then take a deep dive into Tableau prep, and then Nick will prompt us for the introduction for our workshop as well as the data that we could use or our model for day 2. You can go to the next slide. Now I will be discussing data gathering within the data science methodology. Next slide, please.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I can't see that you moved your slides over. Okay, there we go. All right. So you can go to the data science methodology slide now. Okay, I want to start off by explaining that it's really important that we keep a compass on the data science methodology. Within the data science methodology, there are 4 phases. And within these phases, you have first, you need to formulate your question. So if you're writing a research paper or you're within a business environment and you need to understand what you're trying to answer, and being focused and targeted on what those issues are. After you've formulated your question, you then go into the data gathering stage, which can take a very long period of time. And on the next slide, we'll go into that in a deeper level. After the data gathering phase, we then will pursue how to analyze the data and then produce the product. That product could be a data repository. It could be a data analytics dashboard, a data visualization dashboard, or it could be a paper. One thing that I want to note here is you see the arrows. Many times it's not just going in one direction, but it's moving back and forth. This is to connote that within the data science methodology, it's an iterative process. So sometimes with the steps that you may undergo within some of these phases, you may have to go back and rethink them. So it's really important to understand within this overall data science methodology process that it is an iterative process. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I want to dig deep into the data gathering phase. So after you understand what your problem is and what your question is that you want to solve within your research, you then need to first understand these different steps. So within these steps, okay. I'm not sure if you all can hear me again because my microphone went off. Can someone tell me in the text if you can hear me? Nick, can you hear me? Oh, that's funny. We can still hear you. Okay, great. Because My headphones decided they wasn't going to work right now. Great. Okay. So let's get back. So within the data gathering process, you have 4 steps. So within the 4 steps, you have data requirements, data collection, data understanding, and preparation. Within these slides, we're going to focus on data understanding and data preparation, but I'll briefly go over the 4 steps within the data gathering process. After you understand what your problem is, you first need to understand what the data requirements are. So the question that you want to ask yourself is, what data do you actually need to answer this question that you have decided you want to pursue within your research? Once you've decided, okay, I may need this type of database. Say, like, you may need a housing database or an income database. Then you need to do the data collection. So you need to find out whether or not this data even exists or how you're going to acquire this data. In the data collection process, you may find out that this data actually doesn't exist, and based upon the time constraints, you cannot find this particular data. Then you need to maybe go back to the initial process of understanding whether or not there are other options for data requirements to answer this question. But if you have confirmed that you do have the data requirements that you need and you have found the data, you then can move into the next step, which is data understanding. In data understanding, you want to ask yourself, is the data that you collected representative of the problem to be solved? So going back into an understanding of what your question is, what your research question, you really want to make sure that that data is that you do have in hand is completely representative of solving that problem. Once you've confirmed that, then you get into the fun stuff. You get into the data preparation. And these are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. When you first have your data, you cannot automatically think that, okay, this is it. I don't have to do anything else with this data. A lot of times your data will require you to manipulate and work with the data that you have to transform it into other components. Okay, Nick, we can go to the next slide. Before we kind of get into this whole data cleaning and data process, I really want to reiterate the importance of creating a data dictionary or a data journal. So why is this so important to create this data journal? As you see within the data science methodology process, it's an iterative process where you may have to go back and forward. So you want to be able to record this process and what occurred for your memory, as well as your co-authors, as well as for knowledge for your co-authors, so they don't have to so that doesn't create a duplication of effort. And for both of you all, it may create more problems and more time. So definitely writing down and answering step-by-step questions, it may take time, but it's definitely worth it. And the more, the better. Definitely the more, the better. I have included within, if you click on the files for this class, for this session, you will see that I have included a data journal template that you can download to utilize to help to prompt you to begin to answer questions about your data and to record them within your data journal. Please be sure to use this as you go through your data gathering process within your data science methodology. Okay, next slide, please. Next, I'm going to briefly talk about how data, another word that is commonly used within data cleaning is data wrangling. And data wrangling deals with the 4 steps of data management, data inspection, data preparation, and data transformation. For this webinar, we're going to focus on the data inspection, the preparation, and the transformation. Data management is something that you normally see within the information systems area. And we have a lot of mentors and researchers within this area who are very well versed within this area. But it is also very important as people as data science and analytics evolve and becomes more interdisciplinary, it is important to be aware and to understand how the whole data management component works. A lot of students who now graduate from undergrad are required to have certain types of SQL experience and so forth. So while we're just focusing on the latter three steps of inspection, preparation, and transformation, I definitely encourage you to make sure that you have exposure to data management. And we also have, for our Bowie State University students and anyone else who is interested, for our data science and analytics initiative, we actually have a module on data management as well. Okay, Nick, let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about data inspection. So data inspection within this whole research process that we're undergoing this summer is mainly the exploratory phase of our research. Once we have our data, we want to inspect it. We want to find out how many observations or rows are in the database. You want to look at how many variables or columns you may have. You also want to look at each variable and column to see whether it's numeric or text string. Also, you want to see if the data is classified properly as a numeric integer or is it recorded as a text. Next, you want to see how each of the rows are represented. So some of the techniques that you can utilize within the data inspection process is techniques such as sorting, filtering, frequency distributions. Pivot tables are also really good to utilize within this process. So these techniques are really, really important in that data exploration process, which is data inspection. Okay, next slide, please. The next step really gets into data preparation. So after you've inspected your data, you may come across certain types of missing variables or values, and how you then need to decide how you want to deal with those issues and how you wish to handle them. So two of the main techniques on dealing with missing values is that you need to decide whether or not you want to omit the data or if you will actually want to do an imputation, which is a replacement of your data. These are two very common techniques that have pros and cons with both. With the omission of strategy, which is basically deleting out the values, this does not assume any additional information is given, but the downside is that you have to deal with possibly losing valuable information that can distort your overall results. So that's one caution that you need to take with missing values. Also, it's very important with missing values that you do not take out a large amount of missing values because that can cause problems as well. So that's why it's really important to go through, inspect, and to figure out whether or not you want to move to this particular phase or this particular step with omission. The next one is imputation. So with imputation, you're maintaining all of the information provided, but you're going to make certain assumptions about the value. So you're going to have to maybe estimate or predict how you want to use these various observations. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you have income a variable for individuals, and you notice that some of the income for that particular city that you're looking at, some of the income is missing. So one technique that the literature has shown within economics that has been utilized to accommodate this is that you can take the median value for that city and use that as a replacement for those missing values. Again, it has certain downsides with that as well because it's not the actual value that was recorded, but it is a way to deal with a problem of missing values. The next idea of data preparation, where Nick will kind of show us how different techniques are done within Tableau, is joining various databases. A lot of the research that we are doing this summer is that we are integrating numerous databases from different environments and so forth. And so we need to figure out ways on how to join those databases together. Another component of data preparation could be aggregating your data. So you want to move your data from a micro level, such as a counting level, to a macro level, to a state level. So you may have to aggregate that data up. Okay, next slide. The last phase within data wrangling is data transformation. So within data transformation, what you really need to do is that this component meets the requirements of statistical and data mining techniques that are utilized for your analysis. You may be faced with having to transform or create a new variable within your existing data set. Listed below are a few examples of how researchers have transformed their data. So let's say that you have various income levels for individuals within your database, but you want to kind of group them and put them into different bins. You can then transform the data to have certain categories, like individuals whose income is $65,000 a year. They are within the $50,000 to $100,000 income group, and so forth. Another example is, let's say you have a situation, again, with cities. I deal a lot, I'm a housing economist, so I deal a lot with housing values and housing prices and so forth. So let's say that within a city, you want to look at the housing values, but the values are skewed. So you have really high housing values and you have really low housing values. One solution that you can do is you can transform this data mathematically by normalizing it and taking a natural log. Okay. I was just notified that it's a scratching sound in my microphone. Okay, thank you. The last example is transforming categorical data into numerical formats. So a good example of this is you look at your values and you see that, you look at your values and you see that the values are within a text format. For instance, you see that the values are the word single or married. And so you want to put it in a numerical format because you want to utilize it for regression analysis or for various other visualization techniques that may require a numerical value to it. So what you can do is you can transform your data to say that the numerical value, instead of it just being, is no longer single, but you're going to give it a 1 for someone who is single. You're going to give it a 2 for someone who is married. You're going to give it a 3 for someone who is divorced. So those are a few examples of how to transform your data. You can go to the next slide. So now I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful guest speaker, Nick Stoll, and he's going to integrate some of the topics that I talked about today into how Tableau looks at this and the importance of visualization. So Nick, the show's all yours, and if you could stay on, Nick, because I just realized I can't hear you through this program as well, so we need to stay on the phone.
Okay, let me just make sure. Okay, can everyone hear me on the call?
Oh, actually, Nick, I can hear you, so I'll hang up.
So it's just on my side. Perfect. Well, I won't be able to hear you, Dr. Brown.
Oh, okay. So we can stay on. We can stay on.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening on my end, so I'll just apologize in advance for the problems that may arise. So if we look at, I'll go back one slide. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction to Tableau's perspective when it comes to data visualization and data cleaning. There are two products that mainly cover this. It's going to be Tableau Desktop, which is used for visualization, and then it's also going to be Tableau Prep, which can be used for cleaning and preparing data. So when we go towards the end of today's session, we're going to look at how we can actually use Tableau to build a visualization using COVID-19 data that's been published on a data hub on Tableau's website. And then we'll also go through common pitfalls or common things that you'll run into as you're preparing data for visualization. So for those that are not aware, oh, too far. Tableau's mission is to help people see and understand their data. So it's built for the everyday person, not specialists, and we believe that being able to see the information can really help harness it. So our mission is to make it evident and clear to people. What you generally see as an output is something that looks like this, some sort of a dashboard. So it's a collection of visualizations that are often interactive, but are used to display information visually. And that's what Tableau is all about. It's the visual display of information. It's visual analytics. There was actually a data hub that Tableau has created that kind of aggregates various data sources, makes them available to the public, and then showcases various visualizations that people have created. I've included a link in here. I encourage you to go check out the hub. It's pretty interesting to see what people have come up with to visualize data around this subject. For the demo that we're going through at the end, I've actually used some Johns Hopkins data that looks at historical cases and recoveries and deaths due to COVID. So I've dirtied the data up a little bit so that we can have a little bit of cleaning work to do as a group. If we look at Tableau just very quickly as a platform, it covers a wide range of abilities. And I'm just going to cover this very briefly so that those that are unaware can kind of get a full sense of Tableau's scope. It starts with the ability to access data. I think at this point we're approaching 200 different types of connections to various data sources. It covers the ability to prepare information. So that's going to be joining, unioning, aggregating, cleaning, your ETL processes. The ability to govern information, which is kind of outside of the scope of today, because that comes to if you host material on a server, be it personal or hosted by Tableau. And then it goes into the discovery pieces. So how do you share your information with others? How do you share your insights with others? How do you actually build those insights? So for the sake of today, we're mainly going to focus on these kind of four pieces: the desktop applications, which are going to be Tableau Prep and Tableau Desktop, and then the ability to create analytics. So when you think about, there we go, data analytics, oh, too far. When you think about visual analytics, it's a subset of the overall scope of data analytics. So we're often used to seeing things in Excel, working with numbers, creating charts. And visual analytics, just like other analytics, usually starts with a what or why. So a question that we've seen in the data management tool that Dr. Brown introduced, you always start with questions and then you work from there and it becomes an iterative process. The benefit of using visual analytics, especially a tool like Tableau, even though it's one of many, is that they're fast, they're dynamic, and they're iterative. So you can build as quickly as you can think, you can more quickly get to insights, you can explore incredibly fast. It takes advantage of your ability to see information, see patterns, and it's a productive way to kind of experience data analytics and then share it with others. So it's just a fun quote at the bottom. Visual analytics is a representation and presentation of data that exploits our visual perception abilities in order to amplify cognition. So how you'll see that taken care of within many tools, particularly in Tableau, is through what's called pre-attentive attributes. So these are things that we as humans recognize or can distinguish very quickly. So this isn't the whole gamut of available pre-attentive attributes, but it covers a good smattering. We see things very easily with length. So what sticks out? what's wider than others, what's the orientation of something. You can look at size. We've all seen maps that have different sized values on them to kind of display whatever metric is trying to be displayed. We see shape. That's an easy way for us to distinguish between different categories. Enclosure, position, groupings. Color hue is an easy one, and then color intensity. So when we look at types of variables and general ways in which you can use pre-attentive attributes, this is just a general collection. So for quantitative information, using position or length or size or color intensity is a good way to display a quantitative or a variable that is displayed as a quantity. Ordinal, kind of hierarchical or structured, again, is going to be position, size. Color intensity is very useful, as is different colors and shapes. And you can often use these in conjuncture to highlight things you were trying to display or add kind of additional dimensions of analysis or additional layers to whatever you're trying to display. And lastly, categorical, you can use position, shape, and different colors. One of the common kind of introductory things you can use to show the importance of visual analytics, or at least the speed of it, is if I ask you to find all of the nines in this set of information. We're used to looking at charts, we're used to looking at numbers, but if I ask you to pick out all the nines, it wouldn't be a very quick process. You can take your time to look through them if you want. One thing we can do to make it much easier is to change the color hue and then provide a color contrast. So this makes it much easier to see where all the nines are located, and then it's simply just going through and counting them. I think it's 59, but it's either 56 or 59. So the other thing we can do, and I'll just take you through a quick example. This is what we're used to seeing. If I told you to highlight where there is negative profit, so this is a very tabular format for data. We see we have categories, subcategories, and then segments, and then profit is displayed at the intersection of those categories. So I said, tell me where there is negative profit. We could scan this. We'll typically scan left to right, top to bottom, but I can do things to make it much easier to find that information. We can kind of consider it as a scale to go from something that's in a table as we see here to something that's a complete visual graphic. We can start by saying, okay, we're going to color everything that's below 0. So we could quickly see there are 4 instances of negative profit. I apologize if you're colorblind for red. I could have picked another color. I just wanted to use one that would pop. So one step removed from this and in the direction of a more visual representation would then be to do sort of a heat map. So with this, we add an additional level of information. We're still showing where negative profit is, but now we're also looking at kind of gradation of it. So where are the high values and where are the low values? So we can quickly call out that phones under the consumer segment have a very large profit, whereas tables under the consumer segment in the furniture category have a fairly negative value. The one step towards more visualization with this would be just replace it entirely with a graph. This is a little smaller, but it quickly shows the all the negative values is red and below 0, and then also just like the high values for the various technologies. So this is a quick example of how visual analytics can be used to more quickly come to a conclusion and look at a process for actually creating visualizations or beginning analysis. Similar to what was introduced earlier, it's going to start with a question. So this is what is kind of referred to as the cycle of analytics. It's circular, but then it also kind of goes through the analyst and is iterative. So it's not going to always just going to go cyclically. But you'll start with a task. You're going to ask some questions. Generally the what whys. You're going to ask questions about what types of graphs you may need to use, who your intended audience is. These are all things that are initially going to kind of come to the front and are things you're going to consider before you actually begin looking to get the data. I've included this slide to just show there are various types of dashboards, and a lot of it depends on the purpose. So When I'm, say, developing a dashboard for a client, it's going to come down to who the intended audience is. Is it going to be for an analyst? Is it going to be for an executive? For you, it might be, I have this data set that I don't know much about. How can I explore it? How can I quickly look at different trends or different things that I can do with the information? It may not actually come to being displayed in a dashboard. Tableau can also be used as a tool simply for exploratory analysis. But when you think about a final product that looks something like this, who is the intended audience? What's the intended purpose? Is it exploratory or explanatory? When someone comes to this dashboard, are they looking to explore something, or am I looking to tell them something? So it's two different points of view that are important in determining how you lay out the content. If I want you to come to a dashboard and spend your time exploring it, you don't have an answer or a question in mind, you simply just want to see what the data can tell you. That's a very different purpose than trying to tell a specific story or lead someone down a path. The other thing you have, again, is that level of detail. So is it an executive or is it an analyst? When we move on to that next step, the identifying the key sources of data, how many sources are you going to need? Who has them, or where is the data? Is this something that you're going to have to refresh constantly? Is it something you're going to download once? What do you need to prepare the data for analysis? So again, this is going to come down to all the cleaning steps that you may see, all the joining and kind of pivoting or restructuring you might have to do with the information. Each way that you will visualize information tends to lend itself to a structured set of data. So you can have wide information, you can have long. The structure of the data will help make it easier to visualize or more quick to kind of produce those results. But it's a lot of the questions are still going to be the same. Again, what sources am I going to need? How can I get them? Who has them? How frequently do they need to be updated? What do I need to do to prepare them? When we look at the next step, I have to click the button. It comes into the visual mapping piece. And this is where Tableau really shines. It's where you start thinking about how you're going to have to visualize the information or what you're going to do to kind of use your visual mapping. So you can begin exploring. You can use comparisons that are represented best as bars. You can use maps to represent spatial information. You can use lines to represent temporal or change over time calculations. If you're comparing two things, scatter plots are always an easy way to start. There are certain chart types that lend themselves better to various types of analysis. So it's good to have in the back of your mind an understanding of those different types of visual mappings, and wireframing is always a good idea. Before you start actually writing scripts or creating a visualization in Tableau, you can write out much faster than you can do in any of these tools. So it's a good idea to understand, how do I want my piece of information to interact, and how can I best represent the specific types of things that I'm looking to do. These are just a variety of things that are available online to kind of help you do this. These are more specific to Tableau, but the information you can kind of gain from this are more widespread. The top right is going to be what's called a visual vocabulary. So there are 9 categories, 9 different kind of ways that you can generally visualize data. You can click on each of these and it will give you examples or ideas on how others have visualized kind of what you're looking to do. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's using what others have created and tailoring it to your specific need. On the left side of your screen, that Tableau catalog chart, the chart catalog, it's another useful tool to look at how people have visualized information. So there's bump charts, there's bullet charts, arc maps, all kinds of ways that other people have visualized information that you can use to kind of give you inspiration as you're trying to come up with your own ideas. The one you see in the bottom right, it's a Tableau reference guide that is out there. There's a series of different links you can use that will give you ideas on how to do certain calculations, give you visual tips. There's quite a bit of information there. Next, you kind of move into that view data step. So what did you discover? Something a surprise? Was something more meaningful than you thought it would be originally? Were your hypotheses kind of confirmed? Did you raise any additional questions? The benefit of doing something with using kind of visual analytics is that you can get to this point very quickly, and then you can iterate from it just as quickly. So you don't have to continue on to share this information, develop insights. This may have raised a new idea about what and why needs to be discussed. Maybe this raises a new data source that needs to be used in your analysis. Maybe after you saw something, you realize that you can go back and change your visual mapping to display the information another way. Again, it all goes through you, the analyst, or you as a team looking at this together and understanding things as you go through it. I've grouped those last two together, kind of developing insights and sharing. I kind of feel the viewing data, developing insights, and sharing all kind of go together. They're very similar. But how can you share what you found, and who do you want to share it with? Do you think you found all the facts? Does this, again, raise any additional questions? The intent of this process is not to start from the task and finish with the sharing. It's to evolve, it's to iterate, it's to work just towards a goal. When you kind of compare the two side by side, there's a lot of similarities. You see the lines on both, they kind of go back and forth. They signify that it's not something that's going to start and end immediately. It's something that's going to take some practice and evolve. You see, you formulate questions, tasks, you ask those what whys. You begin to gather the information that you feel is relevant, always considering what other sources you may need. You can analyze it, and then you create something and potentially repeat the process. When you look at moving back to that getting the data phase and think about the tenets of data preparation, I've just broken it down into kind of four main ones that you see a lot of research on and materials on Tableau's site. So it's broken out between clean, restructuring, combining, and validating. Let me click the next one. When you think about cleaning, there are common data transformations that are widespread. Pattern matching and regular expressions, we're using regular expressions to pattern match. You would see this a lot when you're trying to compare data from different sources. One that people commonly run into is country naming or country convention. So people refer to countries differently. You'll likely have to rename things so that they match. You can use regular expressions or pattern matching to do that. You often see dates are in a wide variety of formats. Sometimes it goes year, 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 month, month, day, day, without any separators between the different units of time. So understanding that there's no one right date convention, and you may have to transfer or change, or your program may recognize that your date is actually a number and you'll have to convert it into a date, are important things to do as you begin cleaning information. Splitting columns is also common, or name reduction. So things can often be separated by colons or hyphens. If you think about like product codes or keys, you often have to break them into subcategories and split one column into many. So that's a common task that you run into. As Dr. Brown mentioned earlier, grouping is important. So this can be converting kind of string variables into numeric so they can be used in logical expressions. It could be aggregating up to a higher level. So you have country information, but you want to look at it at a region or continent level. You want to group your information together. You may have to change your data types in general. Again, string to numeric, geographical information. There's many different types of changes that you may do. When I move over into the demo, we'll look at the different types that Tableau actually uses. So I can walk you through geographic, numeric, string, those types of things. Lastly, as was mentioned before, nulls. These are important. Do they need to be treated as zeros? How are they actually used in the information? Do you want to remove them from your data set? Do you want to impute them? There are things to consider when you're looking at your information. When you look at restructuring, specific to Tableau, things work best in a tabular format, similar to what you would see in, say, Excel. Something with rows and columns. But when you get to this point, it's very important to understand what a row of information is telling you. There's a lot of theories out there on how you should structure your data, and a lot of it will come down to the type of analysis or the type of tool you want to use. Tableau works best with either wide data, so your columns contain a piece of information, or it's spread very long. So we're actually going to use a pivoting technique to take wide to long information. The Johns Hopkins data set that we're going to look at has one column per day. So as a new day is added, a new column is put into the data set. When we think about how this is best visualized in Tableau, we actually pivot it and turn those columns into rows. So the other piece that you generally look at with restructuring is that joining process and that unioning process. So if you have two independent data sources, how can we join them together? What is the cardinality or the grain of the data? That's going to be important. Are you going to have to aggregate one before you join it to another? Are you going to run into duplication issues if you do the wrong type of join? That kind of flows into the combine section. I'm not going to go too much into joining. There's a useful kind of graph there that shows what a left join is, what a right join is, outer and inner, and then a description if you prefer to read kind of your material instead of looking at a visual. Looking at those two together, we talk about the data inspection, preparation, and transformation. That can be pretty easily transferred into cleaning, restructuring, combining, and validating. And again, this covers less of that data management piece, which speaks to where is the data being held, and those are other considerations for another time. When we move into what Tableau provides in terms of accomplishing this, it's Tableau Prep. So this is an example of just what a flow looks like, which is what Tableau refers to as the process of cleaning your data. So Tableau Prep is used for preparing information for analysis, creating reproducible steps that others can use, and then it also allows initial exploratory analysis. So you don't necessarily have to see what's going on within this flow, but each one of those steps can be looked at, can be analyzed, can be used by other people to achieve the same steps you use to clean your information. So as a tool, Tableau Prep is best used for cleaning, restructuring, combining. That validation piece, it just kind of comes as you explore the data and discover it. It's very important to keep data valid and understand that what you're displaying is the actual value. So it's something that should be considered throughout the entire cycle of analytics. It's not going to be done at once. Oh, so that's the piece that I have for the presentation. I'm going to move into a demo of Tableau Desktop for those that have never seen it before. But first, we're kind of at an hour mark, so I was thinking we would take a 10-minute break.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully the feedback isn't there. I mean, not mute on your phone, mute on the webinar jam environment. So one thing that I want to, let me see, do before we take a quick break is I want to get an idea of your experience with Tableau. So now I think would be a good time to do the poll. When you agree, Nick? Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to publish the poll. So the question really asks, what best describes your experience with Tableau? So if you could quickly answer which one is, have you ever, I've never used Tableau, I don't intend to, I have never used Tableau but want to know more, I understand the basics of Tableau, I have used Tableau for several projects, or I feel comfortable building complex dashboards in Tableau. So this is to help kind of gauge where you are and what your experience is so we could better accommodate you. Okay. So it looks like 65% of us have never used Tableau but want to know more, which is great. One other thing is maybe we can take, I'm not sure how we're going to do this since we're having sound issues, but I am going to let's look at the chat, Nick. I'm going to mute my microphone. And if you want to ask a couple of questions in the chat before we take a break, do you mind if we do that real quick, Nick? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to mute my microphone and then you can unmute yours in Webinar Jam. So if you have any questions, please ask them. Put them in the chat area.
Looks like we covered everything about data visualization and cleaning.
Okay, so it looks like we have one question or a couple of questions. So Nick, I'll let you read them, and if we'll see if it has to do with me or you. I think.
So it really depends. It's very easy to start playing around with, but it's one of those things that can take a little bit of time to get really good at. So I'll show you very quickly in the demo how you can build a visualization that's very impactful, and it's a drag and drop tool. So many BI tools like this have, I wouldn't call it a steep learning curve, but you'll realize as you get started, there's so much that you can do that in order to learn everything, it takes time. So you'll be very, I think you'll really enjoy when you first start out how easy and intuitive it is. But that's speaking from someone that has used it for a length of time. So I've seen people pick it up very quickly. When we talk about what's unique about Tableau, it does support predictive analytics. I was going to go with what is unique about Tableau. So there are several tools out there for business intelligence. Tableau is based a lot on the science of visualization. So the interface is very easy to use. It can connect to most, if not all, data sources. You can build your own connectors if you need to. The speed at which you can build things is pretty impressive. And if your data doesn't have something, you can always add a calculation to enhance it. So yeah, Tableau does support predictive analytics. I'm not going to go through it today, but you can include both Python and R scripts if you want to do some more in-depth statistical analysis. Right out of the box, there's something called Explain That Mark, which is if you click on a value that, say, looks like an outlier or is something you want to know more, it will try its best to run through the data source itself and give you explanations as to why that value is the way it is. Outside of that, you can easily do lines of best fit or other forms of analysis with that. Let's see. Is there any more? I think that's it. I hope that answered everyone's questions.
Yeah, I believe that did. Thank you so much. Do we have any more questions before we take a quick for you, Nick? I can read it. If it's feedback, you might want to read it. So I'll go ahead and mute my mic, and maybe Nick, you can read the question.
So I think the question there is, how does it compare to visual tools like SAS? I haven't personally used SAS, but I've used other kind of business intelligence projects like business objects, and they're the flexibility that you have with Tableau is just much greater. So those, I can't speak necessarily for SAS, but some of the older kind of business intelligence tools were very heavy on tables or building like pretty rudimentary charts and very limited interactivity. So the benefit of this is the quickness with which you can explore data and the quickness with which you can build visualizations. So those tools have a pretty rigid structure that don't, again, allow much interactivity. So I'll display this in a second, and we can see how quickly it takes for me to build a visualization. But part of it is kind of the act of doing. So seeing for yourself just how much faster some of these new business intelligence tools can be.
Great. Thank you so much. Nick, you might want to try sharing your screen now. And how long do you think we should take a break for? About maybe 5 or 10 minutes. What do you think? What do you think we should do? Not ready. You can say no in the chat, but for the most part, we'll keep it going.
Sweet.
Uh,
So I have a couple things on my screen right now. I'll start with the e-learning. So this is the link that I just sent out. You'll see if we go to the e-learning platform, we can log in and see a lot of the badges that are there. So depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve, if you're looking to kind of improve your general Tableau skills, you can go through some of the badges. So I would encourage people to try the analyst badge and the data science badge. Developers are going to get more into how do you kind of embed visualizations in a web page. So that'll get more into like HTML and Java scripts, and then you can also take advantage of APIs. Site admin and site server are things that you're not necessarily going to need, but all of the courses that make up those badges can be found on that e-learning site as well. So as Dr. Brown was making reference to, I've included a useful links in there. And this is just a collection of things that I found useful while I've started to learn Tableau.
excuse me for 1 second, Nick. I've received a message saying that they can't hear us. Oh, okay. Someone said it's working better now. Okay, so you could go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is just a kind of a collection of useful resources that I would encourage you to check out. Some of them cover best practices around preparing or prepping data, talk about Tableau data structure that it encourages you to use. A lot of these, like the visual vocabulary, will actually it helps you generate or think of ideas that you would want to use for actual visualization. So I'm going to go ahead and move into the what Tableau looks like as a product. So this is the demo dashboard that I put together. This is what you first see when you open Tableau. And the first thing you'll want to do is connect to just a data source. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to an Excel file that we'll be using. And when you first bring in a data source, I brought in what's called an extract, which is a data file that is native to Tableau. It's a .hyper, and it's just more performant within the kind of the Tableau environment. So the fields that I have in my data source are, I have a state or a province, I have a country or a region, I have latitude and longitude associated with those countries and those regions. And I have a type and a continent that I placed in there myself, and then a cumulative total. The thing about this Johns Hopkins dataset is that it gives you the value that has been recorded up to that day. So if I look at, say, the end of January and the data collection started at the beginning of January, the information for, say, January 29th would be the cumulative sum of everything for the month of January. So it's important to understand what a row of information within your data set is telling you. Unique to kind of Tableau's environment are these little icons that indicate what type of information it is. So Tableau recognizes that this column of state and province is actually, it's geographic. So it has a little globe here. We see that this is a date field. It references this as a number, and we can kind of see that these are both text fields. The next thing you'll do is kind of go into the blank canvas. I'm going to move through some of this quickly, so if you're kind of following along, I'm sorry if you kind of get lost in some of the steps. But what Tableau does is it organizes your information, whatever source you're connected to, on the left-hand side. So it breaks it up into what are called dimensions and measures. A measure is anything that you want to apply arithmetic to, so cumulative total. It just groups lat and long down here. I can move this up if I wanted to. And then dimensions are categories. So date is considered a category. The type is considered a category. And what I'll do here is I'll just drag and drop dimensions and measures into my view to start building things. I can quickly explore what type is to me. So when I bring type in, it will apply type to a row. So what it does is it looks at the field type in my data source. It understands what all the values are, and then it will give me one row per value, one row per category. So in my data source, type has 3 unique values: confirmed, deaths, and recovered. And relative to this information, it tells you on a given day how many deaths were there, how many people recovered, and how many confirmed cases. I guess it's up until that date. So I can remove this. I can show you what it looks like to bring a different field in. If I bring in, I'll bring in country. I will get one row for every country that I decided to bring into my data source. Let's see.
Nick, I have a quick question. Is there a way that, oh, okay, you're making your font a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that easier to see?
Yeah, it is.
So, okay. Yeah. So again, what it will do is it will look at whatever dimension I bring in, and it will assign a row to every value. What I can then do is bring in a measure. I'll bring in that cumulative total, bring it onto columns, and it will then create a bar summing up the total cases. In this case, it's not accurate yet because it's summing up a cumulative total that is growing every day. So I'm just going to quickly filter this to a specific date. We'll go most recently, the 16th. So this is saying, since things have been recorded through June 16th, how many cases there are of COVID. So I'm going to sort this from high to low. I'm also going to bring the type onto color. So I can see of the confirmed cases, there were this many deaths and this many recovered as of June 16th. So I can scroll through this. I can get all the values. By manipulating where things are placed, I can change how things are displayed. So I can quickly kind of reset this view and build one that I wanted to show you. I'm going to look at kind of regional trends, continent trends over time. So I first want to build a map that has all of the regions on it. So I'm going to drag this onto detail. It is going to build a map for me. I'm going to turn this into a chloropleth map. And then I want to color based on not country, based on continent name. Let me do something quickly.
So are you changing the geographic variable to change it to continents? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, essentially I brought on a level of detail which is country. So I have a field in my data source that is called country. And I also have a field in my data source that is called continent.
Oh, okay.
So continent. I'm creating a map that has all the countries on it, but then I'm coloring it by the continent that it belongs to.
Cool.
So I've quickly just made a map. I want to then next create something that looks at change over time. So similar to Excel, we can add new sheets to our view. I created a new sheet called Sheet 6. I guess I can name this one. Let's call this World Map. In my new sheet, I want to look at change over time. So I have my date field. I'm going to bring it into columns. And then I'm also going to change this into, one second. I'm going to change it into individual days. So basically, it looks really, since it's larger, it's not going to show up nicely. But I now basically have said for every date in my data set, I want to create a column. So the data that I have currently started on January 22nd, and it runs all the way through June 16th. So what I can then also do is look at the cumulative total of cases. So what I've done is I have days running across the bottom. I'm going to make this fit so it's easier to see everything. And starting on the 22nd, moving all the way to the 16th, these are the total cumulative cases of COVID. This is not, I'm not going to treat it as a line. I want this to actually be a bar because I want to color this bar to see trends kind of regionally. So what I want to do is bring country region. Let's do this. I can create table calcs that allow me to look at totals. So what I want to first do is bring continent name onto color. What this does is it sums up the number of cases per day per continent, and then I can scroll over to kind of see that growth. So we already, was there a question, Dr. Brown?
Oh, no, no, no. I'm just, this is pretty cool. That's all.
Yeah.
I didn't see any questions. And if you all do have questions, you can put them in the chat menu.
Yeah, I have the chat open on the other window now. So what we have in this graph is cumulative growth of cases over time. I want to look at this as a percentage of cases by continent on a given day. So I want to see, we see that there's massive growth within Asia. We see there's massive growth in Europe. But what does this look like if we look at a percent of total? Percent of total. And then I want to compute using table down. So essentially, we see that at the beginning of data collection, of what we have within this data set, almost 100% of cases were recorded in Asia. And then as we move forward, we see that Europe starts to increase, and then Europe decreases, and then we also see North America increase and stay pretty consistent. It wasn't until recently, it looks like in the beginning of March, that we actually saw a growth in cases as at least a percentage of global total in South America. So I'm going to start to build kind of a dashboard out of this. I just want to add one more view that kind of gives a high-level KPI. So again, this is a percent of total. This isn't giving a relative volume. We could give actual numbers, but I am going to create one last view that allows me to look at, break it out by the type. And I'm going to do cumulative total. And then I need to filter it to the most recent day so the numbers aren't absolutely massive. I'll keep it the most recent. And then we can, let me make this more of a KPI for you. Ta-da-da. So I can change and format the text as I see fit. I'm going to make the type much bolder and bigger. I'll have it fit the entire view. I'm actually going to hide this. And then I'm going to name this just KPI. Oh, I already have it, KPI 2. So what we now have is just a general KPI that shows us current totals as of today's date. I want to keep recovered at the top, so I can actually, let me bring this back. I can just drag the category to manually sort it. So recovered will be at the top, confirmed will be in the middle, and deaths will be at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and hide this again. Show header. I'm going to go back to my world map, and I'm going to bring on, oh shoot, sorry. Let me go back to this one. Now, I'm going to start building a dashboard that allows me to interact between these various sheets. So I've created a very simple set of kind of views. I've created a view that shows as a percentage of cases, where are they geographically by continent. I've created a world map that I want to use to allow me to look at specific countries within that larger chart. And then I just have a KPI that will then show me, as of today, what are the cumulative cases. So I can go into create a new dashboard. I'm going to throw a header on this. I'm just going to call it sample dashboard. Sample COVID dashboard. Sounds good. Bigger. Let's make it that big, bold. When you're dragging things into a dashboard, initially it's going to take up all the space. So as I start to bring in subsequent views, it will begin to take up the space. Let me change the color of this. Let me then also add my sheet to it. Let me add my KPI on the side. Oop. Bring this back to the top. And then actually make it look pretty. We don't need to give the KPI that much space.
So Nick, how are you moving them around? You're just holding on to each window and
Yeah,
drag.
so it's all going to be clicking and dragging. So I'm just kind of moving my mouse and putting it into a specific place. And depending on where I let go, that's what is going to populate the view in that place. I'm going to remove this header. I'm going to give this less space. And then I actually now want to create an action that allows these to talk to each other.
Cool.
So actions I'm going to specify on the world map. And I'm going to say when I select something on the world map, I want it to filter what I currently have as sheet 6. And that is it. So what will happen is as I select a country, let's pick one that has a lot of cases, it will show the relative volume for that specific country within the global total. So we can see within Asia, we can click on China to see what their proportion is amongst the rest of their group. We can see Oceania is incredibly small. It's very difficult to see. We can go look at Brazil to see how much it's grown in the past couple months. We can set up, let's go look at the UK. The UK stayed pretty steady. We can begin clicking on countries and seeing what their trajectories have been for cases. So this was just an example of a dashboard that I wanted to show you that you can build fairly quickly. It didn't take very long to do. And then if it raises a question, you can then begin immediately to try to answer that question.
Great. Thank you so much. I mean, you know, one thing I do want to say, I've built dashboards before in Tableau as well, and you know, I don't want people to think that, oh, well, of course it's quick for him because he's a Tableau expert, but it actually is a quick process, and it's a fun process where you can kind of really play around and click and be creative. That's what I really like about Tableau. Wouldn't you agree?
I would completely agree.
Great. So so next up, what do we have after the Tableau desktop? One thing we're getting into, oh wait, one person has a question, I believe Dr. Fox. He said, just curious, what will happen if you flip the axis, the effects on the map and the analytics? So I guess he's talking about the continent one that you did. So I guess everything would be upside down, correct? If you flip the axis.
Sorry, which axis are you talking about for this kind of percentage chart?
Yes. I believe he's talking about that one.
So there's a button we can use here. We can, if this is what you're referring to, we can easily just flip the axes and then let me fit it to entire view. So we can see something that looks like this.
Cool.
I don't know if this is answering your question, but there's a button for transposing to just swap the rows and the columns. And then we see, I'm guessing this is the first date and this is the end date.
Okay. Yeah, he said that's exactly what
he was. So when we go back to the dashboard, it'll look something like that.
Okay. Yeah, and then that kind of gets into the whole, you know, what works better as far as visual analytics. So the one that you originally did definitely is easier to follow along as opposed to this one right here as well. So
right. So we can, yeah. But the other thing, I think I pulled up growth over time, which was looking at total cumulative total by country. So again, we threw a bunch of countries on here. Each country has a color, so not the most useful map. But we can see immediately if we hover over a line, this is the United States, and just how far and above our cases have grown compared to other countries. We can, I think one thing you were interested in, let me see if I can think through this quickly. We can do a date on the columns. We can do country as a detail, and then we can do cumulative total. And then we can color, let me fit this entire view. We can color by the country. Oh, I used the wrong one. That was the wrong group, sorry. Let me color by continent. And then I can add, depending on what you can do, you can also add trend lines and those types of things.
Cool.
So this would be where you would start doing some of the, that wasn't as useful because it was clustering incorrectly, but this is where you would then begin to be able to add trend lines and forecast based on how you set it up. It needs to be set up in a specific way in order for you to do that though. So I currently don't have it set up in a way to use forecasting.
Oh, okay. But basically, and you definitely need to do the trend line. You definitely need a variable that represents some measure of time and
Right.
so forth as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is really good to also by you doing this is showing us how easy it is as far as dragging and dropping the variables or the what do they call? They call them dimensions and
Yeah, they call them dimensions and measures.
right. Okay, cool. So one thing that I thought was really important beyond the, and Tableau desktop, that's the fun stuff and everything, but a lot of times before we get into Tableau desktop, a lot of people, you need to understand that you do need to kind of clean and prep the data and so forth. So I know that that's something else that we will definitely get into and explore as well, but this is great. Does anyone else have any other questions for Nick? Guess we'll wait a minute while they're typing their questions. So Nick, can you briefly let us know as far as with the introduction to the workshop, what you're going to be looking for us to kind of present tomorrow and work through is both it is creating these visualizations within the Tableau desktop environment, correct?
Correct. So we set forth just kind of, for the workshop, we want to encourage you to do what you want to do. So there's the data set that I used for this visualization. So if you want to explore that, you're more than welcome to. What's more important, at least in my mind, is the process. So as long as you can articulate kind of what task you started with, what questions were you trying to answer, kind of who your intended audience is, how you kind of got around to choosing visualizations, and then any problems you may have discovered in the data, that is more important to me. So when we come to the end of tomorrow's workshop and we're doing a little bit of show and tell, we'll kind of look at individuals' visualizations. We'll have a quick talk about kind of some of these questions that we see on the screen or some of these things that I want you to consider. And we'll look at what people came up with. So again, if you feel like you have a data source that you want to use, please use it. But if you would like to use the one that is provided here, a cleaned version is in the outputs.
Great. So if someone could put a message in the chat to let me know that you are able to access the files and download the files, that would be great. And regarding the task for the workshop, we can definitely, I can definitely email that out as well. So I guess what's up next is Tableau prep, correct?
Correct. So do people have Tableau prep installed on their computers, and are you wanting to follow along as I go through the process? So we can do something similar to what we just did, where I kind of walk through it and say what I'm doing, or we can work on cleaning the data together. Can I get a couple comments in the chat as to what you would prefer?
Actually, I might be able to do a poll.
Ooh.
Yeah. So let me type this up regarding Tableau prep. So you want to know if they want to just follow along, or if they want to do hands-on right
Correct. Now. Kind of a guided cleaning session.
Okay. Okay, I am going to publish the poll. So basically what Nick wants to know is, with this Tableau prep demonstration, do you want to follow along with him showing how Tableau prep works, or do you want to do a guided session? And we'll go with majority.
Ooh,
50.
it's getting split. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and do a guided one. So if everyone can open Tableau Prep on their machines, we can kind of get started.
Okay, open mine as well. I have to minimize this screen.
So I'll speak generally before I actually get started. So if you haven't opened it yet, don't feel like you need to rush. Tableau Prep, similar to Tableau Desktop, when you open it, is going to ask for you to either open an existing file or connect to a data source to create a flow. So in this case, we're actually going to connect to that folder that was associated with kind of the webinar today, and we're going to add in some of the Johns Hopkins data that exists there. You can feel free to explore the data sets in Excel if you're more comfortable. I'm going to kind of walk through how they're kind of shown and visualized in Tableau Prep. But today, I've written the steps out. We're going to show what a wildcard join looks like. We're going to do some pivoting. We're going to split some columns and change some dates. We're going to group and rename. I intentionally made mistakes in the data sources so that we would need to fix them in Tableau Prep. We're also going to do a little bit of rearranging. I'm going to show you what a join looks like, because by default, the files from the Johns Hopkins group does not have continent names associated with it. And then we're also going to look at data types before creating an output file that we can use.
Okay, I'm still waiting for my Tableau Prep to load up. And then I got a message from Samantha, our graduate assistant, who's helping us out today. And we need to share the files. Okay, so the files are shared within the Webinar Jam environment. If you click on files, you should be able to download them. If you're not able to download them, you can put your email in the chat, and Samantha can email them to you as well. But I think for the data science and analytics group, she has you all's let me see. She has you all's information, your email addresses already, so she can just easily go ahead.
So I'm going to run and grab a glass of water. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay, great. Okay, so Samantha said that she's sharing them now, and they are on the side of the screen, and everyone should be able to see the 3 files. So the file that we're going to be working with Tableau Prep is labeled data files. If you have any questions or issues, you can put it in the chat, and we'll try to accommodate you. Okay, great. Dr. Mangle says he got it. Is anyone still opening up their Tableau Prep? If so, you can say yes so we can wait.
I'm back.
Okay, great. I just asked a question if anybody was having problems opening up Tableau Prep, and no one said anything. So, okay, we have one. Okay. I'm not sure what email. Oh, Dr. Betabenga. Okay, so you can access the files right in Webinar Jam now. All you need to do is on the right hand side, I believe, it says, because I might see things a little different, it may say files. And then all you need to do is click on the file that says, what's the name of the file again? I'm sorry. I need to open up my screen again. It's so funny. I get so used to using two screens, and today I'm only using one. The file says data files. So she's not going to be emailing them because they're right there. But if you need me to, I will go into another area and email and find them myself and try to email them to you if you still have problems. Okay, so great. It looks like we're ready, Nick.
All right. Sorry, I was adding another filter to the dashboard. I realized.
Isn't that like so? I mean, you just start getting into it. You're like, oh, wait, let me do this one other thing.
Yeah, no, I realized I hadn't broken this chart out by type. So now you can click on recovered, confirmed, or deaths, and it will filter this view based on your selection. So if you want to look, if you want to click on percentage of deaths over time, or if you look at the number of confirmed cases over time, or the number of recovered over time.
Okay, so then if you click on, so like you click on deaths and then you click on a country, it will specifically show you what that is, what the number of deaths are for that country or recovery.
Potentially. I haven't associated this KPI with the countries, so
okay.
You could, I just haven't done it.
Okay, great.
Yep, cool. So let's go back to Tableau Prep. What we're going to do is we're going to load in one of the Excel files. So on the left-hand panel, you'll see, do I have this set up? I don't. Connections, we're going to go hit the plus button, and then we're going to join to an Excel file. So for me, it's the third option down. We're going to connect to Microsoft Excel. So I'm taken immediately to the data files folder. You may have to navigate to it, but we are going to join to one of the three files. So the way the data currently is, there is a file for confirmed cases, for deaths, and for recoveries. So currently they're separate, they're distinct. For right now, we're just going to connect to one of them. I'll connect to the confirmed cases and open that up. So when you, as you're going through this, when you bring a file in for the first time, this is kind of the view that you're being shown. You will have a bottom half of the screen and a top half of the screen. The top half is going to show your schematic or kind of your flow diagram, which will show you all the steps that you have created for your Tableau flow. So all the steps you're going to apply to the data as you bring it in. We can see here I have one data source. I have a plus button that appears next to my data source, and I can use...
Sorry, Nick, I might have to interrupt you for a second. I just want to ask real quickly. I see some people, they may have Tableau Prep open, but I'm not sure if they have the data that's involved as well. So if somebody could let me know that they were able to download and load the data, that would be great. So because then we can see where we are in the process. So just let me know in the chat. And Noel, I see your comment. Yes, the files can be emailed at a later date as well. So can somebody please let me know if you're able to download the file data that was provided? Okay, Dr.
Right.
He's downloaded it.
Tableau does work on Macs.
Yeah, I actually have a Mac. I'm on a Mac right now. So yes, you have to get the Mac version, like any other application, right? Yes. Okay.
I have downloaded, but how do I upload on the...
Okay. Oh, she missed that step. So she wants to know the connect.
Oh, connecting? Yes.
Yeah. So, and you know, we're a little slow, so if you could go a little bit slower, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. So to connect to information, you should have a blue banner on the left-hand side of your screen. So yes, the confirmed global file, it's any of the three. We're going to actually be doing a join, so it'll take care of everything. So we're going to go connect to a Microsoft Excel file. So we'll hit the plus button next to connections, and then it will bring up a very long list of available data source connections. We're just going to stick with Microsoft Excel. You should be able to see a bunch of different other types. There's SAP HANA. There's quite a few different Spark SQL if you have SQL servers, MongoDB, some of the other ones. But we're going to select Microsoft Excel. Then you'll navigate to the confirmed global, the time series COVID-19 confirmed global Excel file, which is in the data files folder. And then when you hit open, it will load it into Tableau Prep. How are we so far?
Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. I know one person, I think he may have came in a little late. He wanted to know if this was a demo. So yes, this is a demo, and you can follow. We voted, majority voted to follow along because a lot of us have Tableau Prep on our desktop, but you could just watch as well to see how it works. Okay.
Yeah. I'll slow it down though. So
Great.
Again, we have the screen. The screen when you're using Tableau Prep is broken into two sections. You have the top section, which is going to show you a visual representation of the steps you're going to use. So it's going to be a picture of what is going to happen to the data. The bottom half is going to be how you manipulate some of the steps, and will also give you a visual representation of the data source itself. So because we just brought in a data file, we by default have single table, meaning we just brought in a single source of data to show. And this will show us all of the fields that are in this data source. It's based on a representative sample that we're able to change. I just kind of leave it at defaults. But what we can see here, just by looking at a quick high level, we have province and state, we have country and region, we have country underscore state, which is something I created, which is basically a country and then a double slash. So we're going to be splitting this up later. We have an associated lat long, and then we have a column for every date. So it's going to go from January 22nd to June 16th. But Tableau recognizes this as a number. So we're actually going to have to convert this into a date. I'm quickly going to show you what this looks like as a data source. So if I hit the plus sign that appears in the schematic portion of the screen, I can add a step to my flow. So again, this is going to tell Tableau Prep what I want to do. So for now, I'm just going to add a clean step, which is that first option. And then in doing so, it adds it to my diagram. I'm taking away from the load screen, and I'm taken to a screen that will give me a representation of the data source itself. So what this will do is it will create histograms for numeric values. It will do a list of all text values, and I can get a representative sampling of how common a field is. So I can find, I can click on China, and it will show a proportion of fields that are related to what I just selected.
Right. So in essence, this really gives you the frequency distribution that normally would take a little bit longer to utilize within with other applications.
Correct. So generally you'd have to write some sort, if you're doing things in R, you'd have to do like summary statistics. This allows you to click on things and start to just explore the data. So a little bit later, we're actually going to change some fields. I could go in here and I could change the name of China if I just double click it. And I'm just going to throw a couple spaces in there. And what happens is I now have a new pane that appears that keeps track of all the changes that I've made to my data source. So it basically is telling me I did a group and replace. I changed the name of China to something else. So in my diagram up above, I have my data source that's brought in. In my clean step, there's a little icon that indicates what I did to it. And then I can see the changes both in my data set and as a list of changes that I've made. So
So this is like our own little data journal
Correct.
in here. So can
Correct.
we save it and so forth within this environment too?
Sorry.
Can we when we save this, it will save those logs of all of the changes?
Yes. Yeah. So it'll save the logs, and then you can share this file with other people, and they can connect their data and run the same steps that you did. So for now, I'm going to remove this step. I right-click on it and hit remove. And I'm actually going to go back to my initial data source. So if you remember in the data file folder, there were 3 files that I want to use. I could individually connect these files together by connecting to a new data source and just saying I want to connect to new Microsoft file, and then I want to connect global deaths. If I do this, it would bring it in as a distinct source, and then I would have to union the two together. There's a faster way of doing it, and that's with what is called a wildcard union. So
wait, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you for a second. So I was following along with you and I cleaned my data. And so I have a Mac and I tried to right click and it will not let me right click and remove it. Any oh, wait, I think I see it now. Okay, great, I'm good. Okay, so we're going into connections now.
So you should have your data source selected. It's the only thing in the view right now. And if you select wildcard union from the input pane, we're given a couple options. So we are looking in the file data files. We're looking for a pattern. I'm going to remove this. So it's just going to say all files that are in this folder.
You're going to rename it? Is that what you're doing?
I just deleted it, yeah.
Okay.
So delete that matching pattern.
Okay.
And now if you hit enter, we'll see that the matching pattern says blank equals include all. So basically we're including all files at this folder location.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see at the bottom, it has recognized that there are 3 files at this location. So it sees that there's the confirmed global, the deaths global, and the recovered global.
Oh, cool. Okay. So we didn't have to input any new.
Nope. We just have to point it to a folder, and then it will recognize either on pattern matching. So I could say only give me CSV files or only give me certain types of files. But because we only have files in there that we want to include, it'll include all 3 Excel files. So if I hit apply,
okay,
it's going to run through. It's currently validating the flow and generating a schema. And I've essentially joined all 3 of my data sources together in one step.
Okay, so someone made a comment. They're saying that they don't see the Excel sheets. So we didn't go in. I'm gonna see if I can answer this question. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
Like, we did not go in and add any new Excel sheets. What Nick did was he clicked on the existing data set that we have, and he clicked on wildcard union, and then under wildcard union where you have some writing that says matching pattern, I deleted that out, and then at the bottom it shows you all 3 of the files, and then you just click apply. Is that correct?
Correct. It might also be this is how you access the Excel files. You add a connection, and then you click Microsoft Excel.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're thinking that she might not have added the original.
I'm not, maybe, I'm not sure. So the thing to make this wildcard union work is under that matching pattern option, you want to remove anything that it says there. You want it to be blank so that it doesn't look for a pattern, it just includes all files. And then if you click your mouse outside so that it actually retains that information, it will update with those 3 files. So I can do this again. Let me just start from scratch. So I'm going to remove this completely. I'm going to add a Microsoft Excel connection. I'm just going to use the confirmed global. When I hit open, it brings in that single file. You'll see I already connected to it. I just don't currently have it shown in my view. When I go to that input panel, I'll select wildcard union. And then by default, it brings in the name of the field. So where it's currently highlighted under matching pattern, if I just delete that and then click outside of the box, click, it will then recognize that there are more files at that folder location.
Right, down at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just has to click apply after that.
Correct.
Okay, I think we're good now.
So that's the first step. We just did a wildcard union. We joined those 3 files together in this single step. So where you see where I currently have my mouse hovered underneath that icon, it says time series COVID-19 confirmed. If I double click that, I can change the name and call this main data set. So I have named the step, and I can also add a description. So by double clicking on it, I can say this step joins the 3 data sources together.
And so, like, let's say like you're doing this and we're sharing a database, so then I go in. So once I see main data set, will I see this description?
If you include a description, it will be there. So anyone that opens this file will have the same thing.
Okay, great.
So I'm also on a trial license because I'm using my personal laptop. You may, depending on what version of Tableau Prep you downloaded, that might be the issue. So I'm not sure what version of Tableau Prep you're using. I'm using 2019.4.
Yeah, the ones that we recommended for the users to use in this would be was 2019 4, but you're right, with 2020 it may be a little different. Okay, so we have a question.
So the wildcard is simply unioning the data. So I know, just because I set this up, that the 3 data sources have the exact same columns. So when I do a union, I know that the field names will be the same. We haven't done a join yet. We've only done a union.
Okay. So can you explain a little bit more the difference between a join and a union?
So we're going to be doing a join later, actually. So here is what the flow will look like at the end.
Okay.
So that's what we're working towards. And this is an example of a join.
Okay, so union just basically says that we have all of those data sets within this environment that can be available to join at a point.
No, so a union is basically you're stacking one data source on top of the other. So we're saying we recognize that these data sets have the same columns, so we want to just make them one long single data set.
Okay, great. Follow you.
So the next thing we're going to do is actually a pivot. And for those that don't know, a pivot will take data that's set up in this very wide format and change it into something that's very tall. So if you look at this data source, this main data set here, these are the names of all of our columns. So essentially, we have a column for every day of data, which is not a very useful way to structure something when you want to do analysis on it. Generally, you would want one column called day and then one column called value instead of...
I'm sorry, Nick. I'm so sorry to interrupt you again. But okay, I just want to ask a question, and can other people let me know? Well, maybe I can do another quick poll. I just want to see the people who are following along and doing the demo. I want to make sure someone's saying that they haven't opened up the data set. So I want to see how many. I'm gonna do a quick poll to see who if you're actually utilizing this, if you have opened up the data set. You know what? Just put yes or no in here. If you're following on with the demo, please let me know if you were able to open up the data set. If you could type yes or no in the chat mode, so we can just go with the majority of the group. And this is a recording, so we can definitely share this at a later date. So one student says no. I believe this student was having technical problems. So is anybody able to? Okay, yes. No. Yes. Okay. So okay, so it's okay, so one person says since we have an older version, now we are updating this. Will this need to restart the computer?
I don't think so.
Okay. 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 Um, okay, so it looks like some people who may be able to open Tableau data prep. So I'm just following the presentation. Okay, so this is a recording, so you can go back and follow the steps later. I'm actually following along with them, so if you know, I can ask him other questions and so forth. But we're going to go ahead and move forward with the presentation because we have a little less than an hour left. Okay. No, I don't recommend you to get the updated version. It says someone take time to update the version. No. We recommend that you use the 2019 for this demonstration that we provided. Okay. All right, Nick, we can get back started.
Okay. So what I was saying, based on my knowledge of this data set, currently what the columns will represent a date. So we have a column for the day of January 22nd. We have a column for the day of January 23rd, and so on and so forth. So when a new day arrives, a new column is added to the data set. But this is just a very, especially in Tableau, a very weird way of trying to visualize information. So what we can do is we can actually pivot it so those columns become rows. What that looks like is we add a step to our process. So I'll click the plus sign that's next to my main data set, and I'm going to select pivot. So the visual cue that Tableau provides is basically a lot of columns going into a very long set of 2 columns. So what we have here are the fields that we can choose from to pivot, and then we will drag them into the pivoted fields view. So what I would encourage you to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think mine is taking a while. Okay, great. I see it now. I had to open up the entire screen to see it. Okay.
Yeah. So what you can do, we want to move all of these days into our pivoted field. We want to take all of our dates and we want to turn them into rows. So they're all fields that we want to pivot. So we'll click the first one. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the last one, 06/16/20. I'm going to hold Shift and hit Enter so that I select all of the ones in between the start and the end. And again, I'm only doing this to the days. I want to keep the other fields that give us descriptive information, but I want to take these columns of dates and turn them into rows. So I currently have them all selected, and I can drag and drop them into my pivoted fields.
Mm-hmm.
And we've essentially created a new pivoted data source. So while it thinks about the pivot that we're doing, it will eventually give us a rendering of what our new data source looks like.
Cool.
So what we've essentially done is we've taken the pivot names, we've created a new column called pivot name, and we have a new column called pivot value, but now we just have 122 January 22nd repeated as a row instead of a column. So I'm actually going to add in a new step. So I'm just going to hit the plus sign and go to clean. So that I can more easily see what I've done. So here, I now have a data set that's much skinnier. There's not as many columns. I've taken those 50, 60 columns and converted them into rows. So now my data set is very long, but it's very skinny. And by default, Tableau Prep will name it pivot and pivot values. So if I just double click that header, I can change this to date. So now instead of pivot name, I've changed it to date, and I've included a change in my data source. I'm going to do the same thing for pivot values. I'm going to double click pivot values, and I'm going to call this cumulative total. So I've recorded a second step or a second change to this step within my thing. How are we doing? Did everyone follow that piece?
Yeah. So let us know if you followed that and if you have any questions with that step. I actually had to go back in and restart, but I'm good. I'm actually doing my pivot right now.
Okay.
Can you all, the people who are doing the demo, I believe I'm going to call your name. Dr. Ntembe, Dr. Hossein, Dr. LaQ, are you all good? So after you did, okay, so I moved my
Sweet.
Okay, good. Okay, great. So one question that I had was I moved my dates over into the field and I did my pivot. What did you do after that? You changed the name?
I added a step. So I hit the plus sign that appears on the pivot.
Oh, right. Okay, and you cleaned it, right?
Correct. So I made a cleaning step. So there's best practices around doing this. One thing that I like to do is I keep kind of restructure steps separate, and I keep cleaning steps separate, so that when I have to go look at this in the future, if it's something I haven't looked at in a long time, I know kind of where to look for the changes that I made.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also going to do a couple more things in this step. All right, to repeat the pivot, what we can do is, let me just go back. I added a step. It's called pivot. Within that, I'm going to select all of my columns, all of my date columns. And I brought them into my pivot fields. Drag and drop into that pivot fields area. So now Tableau is thinking about creating that pivot for me. While it's doing that, I'm actually just going to go into my next step, which I want to do a cleaning on. So I'll hit the plus sign. I will go to clean. And I can change the names by double clicking on the names. So I'll just double click here. I'll change this to date. I'll double click here. I'll change it to cumulative total. And we'll see that those two field names have now been updated. So the other thing that I want you to notice is that above each of the columns, there's a little icon. So as I hover over it, it tells me that this is a string. It tells me that this is a number. It's a whole number. It tells me that this is also a string. This is the country name. But I can also tell just by the little icon that is used. The problem that we see is that the date field is considered a string because Tableau doesn't know that this is a date. One thing we can do is if we click on this, we can actually change this to something else. So I want to tell Tableau that this is actually a date field. And then Tableau will automatically recognize that that is a date field. It will also change the symbol to date. And in doing so, we've done a data type change, and it is recorded in our log of steps.
Cool.
So the other cleaning piece that I would like to do in this step is if we scroll to the far right of our view, we'll see that we have table names and we have file paths. So because we did it to create this main data set, we unioned multiple data sets together. Tableau creates a new dimension or a new field that tells you what source of information this came from.
Okay, so wait, I think I might have scrolled too far over because I'm like seeing. So you said it's called table names.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, I see latitude, longitude. I see where you are, and then it's maybe I didn't pull in all my data, but okay, you can keep on going. If anybody else has any problems finding those, you can make a comment. But I'm gonna go back and change some of pull in all of because we're supposed to be pulling in all the dates, correct? I think I only pulled in a few of the dates.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can just do all of them.
Okay.
But so these two fields that you see, table name and file path, they come from our initial step of joining, or sorry, of unioning the data together. So what this tells us is that we have three data sources currently. We have one that's confirmed cases, one that's deaths, and one that is recovered. If you recall from my demo, I had a field called type, which was confirmed death and recovered. And essentially what I did was I renamed these fields. So I know that each of these sources has a specific type of information. The confirmed data source only has confirmed cases. The deaths only has deaths, and the recovered only has recovered. So I'm actually going to change the name of this to type, and then I'm going to alias that value by double clicking on it. Oh, and calling this confirmed. Which will replace the name of that with the value that I just changed. I'm going to change the time series COVID-19 deaths into deaths. And I'm going to change the recovered into recovered. So because I have knowledge of how I joined all of these data sets together, with how I union them together, I took advantage of the fact that Tableau would create this field for me, and I turned it into a dimension or a field that I can use for comparison in my dashboard.
Okay, does anyone have any questions with that, or do you need him to repeat it? I may actually need you to repeat it in 1 second. I'm cleaning my data again, so I didn't have everything. Okay, so okay, I see table name. So can you take me to table name again and just do that really quickly one more time?
So just double click table name and change it to type.
Type, okay.
And then double click and change the value to whatever you'd like it to be. So you're essentially renaming that variable.
Okay, so I should change it to like a number, a whole number or something like that?
Sure. I mean, these are categories of things. So this is actually a categorical variable that it doesn't need to be a number. It makes more sense as the text that it is.
Oh, okay.
So I would encourage you to say confirmed deaths and recovered.
Confirmed death. Okay, so highlight confirmed deaths and recovered. And what should I do after that?
Have you created these fields?
No, so I missed that step.
All right, I'll just I'll redo it.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go back a step. I'll remove this. Oh, I don't like it when it looks like this. So essentially what I had done, if we go to a cleaning step, we have a field that's called table name.
Right.
So this table name is a field that is created by unioning different data sources together. So it's a field that tells me what data source it is. So if I click on this, confirmed cases, it's going to show me all of the fields in my data source that are related to that table. So essentially, the name of the file is time series COVID-19 confirmed, which tells me that this data source has the confirmed cases of COVID.
Right. Okay.
So I can double click on it and just say confirmed. I don't need to see that whole list.
Oh, okay. I understand now. All right. So you're just changing that whole data set name. Okay.
Correct. Similarly, I know that time series COVID-19 deaths is a table full of deaths related to COVID. I'm just going to call that deaths. And the same also goes for recovered. So I can double click recovered. Recovered. Now I have renamed the file types to match, to basically create a dimension that allows me to more easily analyze my information. So I'll change this to type.
Okay.
And then I think this was the step where I changed the date. So I'm going to go back to pivot names. Pivot names is going to become date. I'm going to change it from a string into a date field. And then I'm going to change pivot values into cumulative total.
Great. Okay, I'm ready now. Sorry, everybody.
So we now have a data source that gives us, on a given day, a total cumulative number of cases up to that date for a given country, a given state and province if relevant. And then we also have latitude and longitude associated with it. And then we also know if it's a confirmed case, a death, or recovered. So those are kind of the pieces of information we have in our data set. I have created just a random field called country state. And what I want you to do is learn how to split this into two fields. So if we look at this, I created a field that is country / province or state. So often you'll find data that is somehow joined together that needs to be split. So we can actually go in and split this into two columns. If you click on the ellipses, this will give us kind of all of the things we're able to do to this column. And what we have is a split values. I'm going to go ahead and do a custom split. And with this, I know my separator is 2 forward slashes. And then I don't want to split off the first. I want to split all of them. So basically, I want what's before the the forward slashes, and I want what's after the backslashes. I can use these descriptors to decide if I want everything that's after one of the slashes, everything that's before the slash. For now, we're going to keep all of it. So again, what we're doing is we're saying, look for those 2 forward slashes, split on those 2 forward slashes, and give me all of the things that come out of it. So when I hit split, I now have, I think they placed it at the beginning, I have 2 new fields. I have country state split 1, and I have country state split 2. So I've split along those forward slashes and created 2 new columns.
Great. Okay.
So these they're duplicate columns because they're already included in the data source. I just wanted to show you how you would split something. So we could then go in and we can rename this. We can also delete this. It's not going to be too relevant to our analysis. It was just an indication to show you how we can go ahead and split. So the next thing we're going to do is actually do a join. There's nothing in our data set that tells us what continent a country is associated with. So I'm going to go back into connections to add a new Excel file. So I'm going to hit that plus sign. I'm going to go into Microsoft Excel. And then I have a folder called File to Join. If we double click that, we will see country and continent. So if we double click and bring country and continent into our view, it gets added into kind of our little design schematic, and we're given an overview of what is in this view. So we see we have 6 fields. We have continent name, continent code, country name, 2-letter country code, 3-letter country code, and then country number. So pretty robust information on countries. What I want to do is I want to join this file with my main data set. So I can do this by clicking and dragging this and going to join. If I hover over my step, so if I hover over that clean step, I will get the option to union, which again is going to add rows to something, or I can join, which is to add columns to something. With this, I can then determine how I want to do my join clause. So the join clause is the field that tells the two data sources how they're related. I have a field called country region. And then I have a field called country name.
So you're just clicking, you're clicking where right now was saying country state. So you want us to click on country region. And then for country name, you want to go to, what's the name of the one for the other one? You want it to be equal to?
Country_name.
Okay, great.
And then this allows us to determine the join type. So currently it's set at an inner join, meaning it basically pairs down both data sets to what's in common between the two. I don't want to lose or degrade my my main data source. So I'm going to do a left join, which says, I want you to take every instance or every row of my main data set and find a corresponding value or a corresponding entity in the secondary data source, and then remove elements from the secondary data source that are not in common between the two. So we will get a little overview of what that means. What this shows us, there are going to be 111,000 rows that have a corresponding match. There are 187 rows that don't have anything in that secondary data source, which probably means my country name does not exist in both tables.
Okay.
What this tells us, from the secondary data source, 75 rows will be excluded. So in my country and continent data source, there are 75 rows or 75 countries that are not in my main data source. And I can see what those are. They're highlighted in red here. This tells me there is no American Samoa in my main data source. If I scroll down here, I can see there's no Cabo Verde in this main data source, which might tell me I need to rename my fields. So this is also saying there's no Diamond Princess, there's no Eswatini, there's no Kyrgyzstan. And I think what we can, if we scroll through these lists, we can try to find what they are supposed to be. So I'm actually just going to go down to if you look at my screen, you will, sorry. Let's go back to it. So I just picked this one out. I don't want to go through the process of making sure everything matches. There's going to be some things that don't overlap. But so I know that Kyrgyzstan and Kyrgyz Republic are the same country. They're just named differently in my data sources. So what I can do, if I double click this and I change the name, Tableau will recognize that these two are now the same, and it will remove this from kind of the excluded list.
Oh, okay.
So this is a very quick way to start going about joins. We'll see now there are 74 excluded instead of 75. There are also 188 instead of 189.
Great.
So joining, especially on countries, can be very painful because you have to make sure that you aren't excluding any values. You want to make sure that you're not duplicating any rows. You want to make sure that the name is exact. So we can do that just how I showed. And then also it will keep track of the changes that were made. It said I made a left join. It also said I renamed fields before I did that join.
Okay, great.
So I want to add a clean step. And I want to clean this into something that I'm going to be ready to use. So I am going to remove this country split one that I don't really need because it's a duplicate. I'm going to go down and say remove. It's going to tell me that's removing. I'm going to do the same thing for country state split 2. It's a duplicate field. I don't need it. I'm going to remove it. I am going to remove the country underscore state, which is the field we use to split and create two. So I don't need that as well. I'm going to remove this. And then I don't really, in my data source, when I'm analyzing it, I don't really need to know the file paths. So I'm also going to remove file paths. And this is personal preference. You can leave all of these fields in here. It's not going to change your analysis. You just need to be aware of what you're using. I also don't need to see the 2-letter code, the 3-letter code, or the country number. I already have the continent name, and I also have continent codes. So I'm actually going to go in and remove the 2-letter country code, the 3-letter country code, and the country number. So we didn't do a perfect job of joining our two data sets together. We can see there are 3% or 33,000 rows of data that don't have an associated continent. And that's a result of us not doing a perfect join between the data source that tells us what continent a country is associated with and our data source of countries. So we can either remove these or just leave them. It kind of comes up to what you're doing with your analysis. I'm going to leave them in there for now. I just wanted to draw your attention to the null values that appear. So we can click on the null values to see where in our data source they appear.
Okay.
If we wanted to go back and change them. So I've essentially changed my, did I need country name? I'm going to remove country name as well. And we get a visual representation again of our data source at the bottom. So this step, this cleaning step, was mainly removal. I'm paring it down. When you're doing visual or when you're doing data analysis, you should always be aware of kind of how big your data set is. That's both the number of columns and the number of rows. If you have a data set that has hundreds of columns, it's going to be very slow. It doesn't matter what tool you're using to visualize or to do data analysis on. If you have hundreds of columns, it will slow things down. So it's a good idea to pare things down to the level with which you will need to be doing something. The final thing that I want to do is, where is it? I want to let Tableau know that my country region is associated geographically. So by default, it's showing that it's a text field. I want to right-click, or I want to click on that text field, go down to a data role, make it geographic, and say country. So be careful here that you don't select county, which is the second option. You want to associate these country names with an actual country. So Tableau will give a little indication saying that that is now, it's still a string, but it has a geographic role assigned to it.
Cool. And that's really, I mean, I've done this before, so that's really important for when you put it into desktop and you want to create maps and so forth.
Correct. And we can do the same thing for state and province. We have a state province field. We want to assign it to a geographic role. It will show that there's a lot of question marks, which means it doesn't know what this is. It doesn't know what state or province that is. It doesn't think it's a state or province, which is true. Bermuda is not a state. So we've essentially created our data source. You can see there's a little like Einstein bubble that appears. If we select it, it will give us suggestions on things we can do to our data set. So we can also click on this here if you see the icon anywhere, and it will give you suggestions on what you might be able to do. So it's basically saying, hey, look, we don't think this is a country. Do you actually want to turn it into this? So Taiwan asterisk is not a country, but Tableau puts it in there just because for some reason it keeps it there. It also says, hey, Diamond Princess is not a country. Maybe we should filter these out. Also says North Macedonia is not a country. Maybe we should filter those out. So we can hit apply and it will take that into effect. I'm just going to leave it alone. And we have essentially created our data source. So we're actually going to take a step to output it. So there is an output option. If you're more comfortable using R or Python to do data cleaning, you can actually insert a script and do more complex cleaning using one of those two platforms. So I'm going to leave it at output. And we'll now see we have a play button, and we are going to be saving it somewhere. So I want to save this to a file. I want to browse to the output folder of my data files, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, COVID-19 cases since 01/22. Now, we will see it will give us the name of the file, the location, and then for output type, we can do a CSV if you know you're going to want to use this in other tools. You also have an option for a hyperfile and a .tde. So they're both extracts, which is a native file to Tableau, but a TDE will retain some of its information as well. So some of its metadata is kept with it, whereas a hyperfile is simply just a data. So I'm going to retain the hyperfile. And now I have created a flow. I can go in here, I can change names, I can add descriptions of each step. But what happens is I've unioned my three data sources together. I then took all the columns that were dates and made them rows. I then cleaned this up doing groups and replaces. I did some calculated fields. I renamed some fields. I also changed the date. I then joined via a left join my country and continent, so I would get that continent information. I did one final cleaning step, and then I have an output. So if I hit this play button, Tableau is going to run this entire flow, and then it will spit a file into that location. So it's running, it's running, it's running. I wonder if I have those files open. I think it takes like 15 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually ran mine. It was really quick.
So it was over in 16 seconds. If I go to output, I now have a hyperfile in there, and I can now visualize my data.
Yay. Any questions with the Tableau prep section?
Yeah, does this seem useful for what you would need to do?
Oh yeah, for definitely for the databases, because the students are going to be going places and they're gathering all types of data. So it's good for them to first kind of utilize this process to do frequencies and analyze the data. What do you all think? Do you all think this is useful? You can put your response in the chat. Okay. All right, so we can. Are you gonna kind of walk us through our introduction for the workshop for tomorrow?
We went through it a little earlier. I can show it again. But okay. So we got a couple responses. Sweet. So essentially for tomorrow, we can use that data set that we just created, or you can use another data source that you're interested in doing. But I want you to create a dashboard or a couple of visualizations that you kind of come up with. And I want you to think about what's the task or question you want to have answered. Who do you think your intended audience is? Maybe put a little bit of consideration into the choices of visualization you want to make. So you want to look at change over time. Well, so what types of charts are good for change over time? So line charts are good. Stacked bar charts can be good, like we showed. Those are the types of things I want you to consider. And then, did you run into any problems as you were trying to use the data? So those are the things I want you to consider. And then at the end of tomorrow, we'll have a little bit of a show and tell where you'll present what you had done.
Great. And we're going to, I'll resend out the link for for this session to everyone, and I'll also send the day 2 workshop requirements. Nick, you mentioned that you had a clean file that people who weren't following along and cleaning the Tableau prep, you put it in that folder. Can you let us know what that file
Yep.
is called?
So it's in the outputs folder, and it's just called output.
Great. Okay, so if you don't have a database that you want to kind of play with tomorrow when we get into Tableau Desktop and do different visualizations, you can use that file. If you're not a part of the DSA Surrey, but you want to kind of be a part of the show and tell, you can email me, and I'm going to see if I can put let me see. I was doing a private chat. Let me see if I can go to everyone. I'm going to put my email address in the chat, and you can email me, and I can add you. I can give you the registration link to the private chat where we're going to be having fun doing visualizations with our DSA Surrey students and mentors. Dr. Ntembe has a question. He says, does it matter if I'm using the full version of Tableau?
Nope, you should have been able to do the same things that we went through.
Great. Any other questions before we conclude for today? If so, you can type them in the chat. For tomorrow, those of you all who are familiar with how we did it yesterday, we will have the hand raise option, so you can kind of come up and present your information as well. So we'll be using the hand raise option as well as the chat feature for tomorrow's workshop. Yep. Okay.
So yeah, I can take that one. There is something. So we're using Prep Builder. There's Prep Conductor, which allows you to automate the running or the refresh rate of these flows. With what we've been using, you'd have to go in and hit play for it to refresh it. It wouldn't do it automatically. So that's an add-on that it's just an additional thing you'd have to buy to use the automated refresh.
Great. And one other thing that I know we'll probably talk a little bit about tomorrow with Tableau Desktop is that while we're just pulling files right from a location on our computer, Tableau Desktop is so robust that it can actually go in and pull files from different types of large shared databases, like within a particular system within different types of networks, correct? Do you kind of follow what I'm asking? I think I might be cut off.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so as long as you have the credentials to that database, you're able to connect to it.
Great. Okay, are there any more questions before we conclude for today? Again, I will resend out the link for tomorrow's session. We're going to begin at 1 o'clock. Dr. Betabenga, if you don't have the session information for tomorrow, but you would like to be a part of it, just simply email me, and I'll send you the registration link, because that's a private session, but you're more than welcome to join us to getting into the Tableau visualization, and that's open for anyone who's interested in that. Great. Well, thank you so much, Nick. I mean, I know you are a very busy person, and it's just really great to have someone who is straight from the source, straight from the application that we're utilizing. So, okay, great. So yeah, so we already have some faculty members who have already identified a database that they're going to use for their research. A lot of the students, you already have databases that you want to look for within your presentations. This is a great time to get a lot of work done. So, so definitely you might want to include those within the workshop presentations. And Samantha or I will be sending out the workshop directions following this session. So thank you again, Nick, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.